When my son David snatched the keys to my new BMW and handed them to his father-in-law, shouting at me, "You're too old for this car." He never imagined that I had installed a military-grade GPS tracker in the vehicle just 3 days earlier. As I watched my $85,000 car drive away with another man behind the wheel, I smiled to myself, knowing he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. Before we continue, subscribe and hit the notification bell because we post new stories every day. Leave a like and tell us in the comments what city and country you're watching from. My name is Emily Vasquez. I'm 68 years old, and for 45 years I worked as a specialized technician in vehicle security systems for armored transport companies in Chicago. This experience taught me that in life, just like in my job, you always have to be 3 steps ahead of any thief, even when that thief turns out to be your own son. It all started on Tuesday, March 22nd, 2024, a date I will never forget. After saving every dollar of my pension and from some extra weekend jobs for 18 months, I was finally able to buy the metallic blue BMW 3 Series that I had been eyeing at the dealership on Michigan Avenue for so long. Rafael Silva, my trusted mechanic for 20 years, had come with me to check the vehicle before the purchase. "Emily," he said while inspecting the engine, "this car is in perfect condition. With the right maintenance, it will easily last you another 15 years. I paid the $85,000 in cash, money I had religiously saved in a special account. The thrill of driving my first luxury car at 68 was indescribable. All my life I had driven used cars, always prioritizing my family's needs over my own desires. Now, finally retired, and with my family obligations fulfilled, I decided to give myself this well-deserved treat. However, knowing the envious nature of some people close to me, especially my son David, I took a precaution that would turn out to be the smartest decision of this whole story. On Friday, March 25th, 3 days after buying the BMW, I discreetly visited an old work colleague, Michael Torres, who now ran a private security company. "Michael," I said, "I need you to install the best tracking system you have in my new car, something completely invisible that runs on military technology." Michael smiled, knowing my work history. "Emily, I have exactly what you need. It's a device we use to protect high-value vehicles, impossible to detect, and with a 5-year battery life. The device was installed in a location so secret that not even the most expert mechanic could find it without knowing exactly where to look. Additionally, I took out a special theft insurance policy with Allstate, paying an extra premium of $1,200 a year. The agent, Charles Mendoza, explained that the insurance covered not only theft, but also unauthorized use of the vehicle by third parties. These precautions proved to be prophetic because just a week later, David's poisoned comments began during Sunday dinner on April 4th at my house. "Mom," David said while cutting his steak, "don't you think it's a bit much for a woman your age to be driving such a powerful car?" My father-in-law, Anthony, always says that after 65 you lose a lot of agility behind the wheel. His wife, Patricia, giggled, adding, "Besides, Emily, that car must use a ton of gas. Wouldn't something more economical be more practical?" I should have recognized the warning signs then, but as a trusting mother, I simply replied, "I've been driving for 50 years without a single serious accident. I think I can handle my own car." David exchanged a meaningful look with Patricia that I didn't interpret correctly at the time. Over the following weeks, the hints became more direct and shameless. On Sunday, April 28, 2024, my world changed forever when David arrived at my house with Patricia and Anthony Jimenez, his father-in-law, with an attitude I had never seen in my 42 years as a mother. It was 3:30 in the afternoon when I heard the doorbell ring insistently. When I opened the door, David walked in without even greeting me, followed by Patricia, who had a strange smile on her face, and Anthony, a burly 65-year-old man, with an arrogant look who had barely spoken to me on the few occasions we had met at family gatherings. "Mom, we need to talk about an important decision," David declared, planting himself in the middle of my living room with his arms crossed. His tone was completely different from the respectful son I thought I knew. "It's about your BMW. We've been thinking, and we believe it's time for you to do something responsible with that car." Patricia made herself comfortable on my sofa as if she owned the place, taking out her cell phone and starting to record us. "Emily," she said in a sweet but fake voice, "we know you paid a lot of money for that car, but let's be realistic. At your age, driving something so powerful is dangerous for you and for all other drivers." Azar. Anthony, who had been silent until then, observing my living room, approached and put his heavy hand on my shoulder. "Emily, I have experience managing high-end vehicles. I worked for 30 years as an executive chauffeur for important businessmen in the city. I know exactly how to handle a BMW like that. You, with all due respect, have only driven old cars your whole life." My blood began to boil, but I stayed calm, waiting to understand where this bizarre conversation was going. "What exactly are you suggesting?" I asked, looking straight at David, who avoided my direct gaze. "We're not suggesting anything, Mom. We are informing you of a decision we've already made for your own good," David replied with a coldness that cut through my heart like a knife. "Anthony needs a reliable vehicle for his work, and you need something more suitable for your age. It's a win-win for the whole family." I mannered. Patricia momentarily stopped recording and added, "Besides, Emily, think how happy you'll feel knowing your car is in expert hands. Anthony has driven Mercedes, Audis, BMWs for millionaires. He really knows how to value and take care of a luxury car." At that moment, I understood they weren't asking for my opinion. They were demanding I hand over the keys to my BMW as if it were an object they could redistribute as they saw fit. The humiliation I felt was so deep that for a few seconds I couldn't speak. "David," I finally managed to say, "I bought that car with my own savings, with money I saved working extra hours for 18 months. It's not a gift you can just give away." My voice trembled, not with fear, but with contained outrage. Anthony laughed dismissively. "Emily, don't be stubborn. Look at reality. You're an older woman. Your eyesight probably isn't what it used to be. Your reflexes are slower. That car is too much for you. I, on the other hand, am in perfect physical condition and have the necessary experience." David stepped closer, raising his voice for the first time. "Mom, stop acting like a spoiled child. Anthony knows how to drive better than you. He has more experience, and we know what's best for everyone. You are too old for that car." My son's words hit me harder than any physical punch. Patricia applauded theatrically, recording my reaction. "Exactly. Emily, your son is right. Your driving days are over. Now it's time for someone more competent to use that BMW as it deserves." Anthony held out his hand to me with a victorious smile. "Give me the keys, Emily. Let's not make this any harder than it has to be. The car will be in better hands, I promise you." At that moment, I felt as if my whole world was collapsing. My own son, the person I had sacrificed so much for my entire life, was treating me like I was incompetent, a burden, someone who didn't deserve to enjoy the fruits of her own labor. Heartbroken but feigning defeat, I walked slowly to the table where I kept the BMW keys. Patricia kept recording, whispering comments like, "This is for the best, and David is so responsible for taking care of his mom." In that work, I picked up the keys with trembling hands, not from fear but from suppressed rage, and handed them to Anthony. "Here you go," I said in a broken voice, playing the part of the defeated old woman they expected to see perfectly. Anthony took the keys with a triumphant smile and showed them to Patricia's camera. "Perfect. Now this BMW will have a real driver. Emily, don't worry, I'll take care of your car as if it were my own." "After." David nodded, satisfied, as if he had just solved an annoying problem. The three of them left my house and headed towards my BMW parked in the driveway. Patricia continued filming as Anthony settled into the driver's seat, adjusting the mirrors with a suspicious familiarity, as if he had been planning this moment for a while. From my window, I watched them start my car and drive down the street, taking with them not only an $85,000 vehicle, but also what little trust I had left in my own son. However, as I watched my BMW's taillights disappear, I couldn't help but smile slightly. They had no idea what they had just unleashed. Monday, April 29th, dawned gray and rainy, exactly matching my mood after the previous day's humiliation. However, my pain quickly transformed into determination as I decided to act immediately to reclaim what was legally mine. At 8 in the morning, I went straight to the Chicago Police Department precinct downtown. The officer on duty, Jordan Sanchez, received me professionally as I explained the situation. "Mrs. Vasquez," he said, reviewing my documents. "I understand your concern, but if your son had some kind of authorization—" "Officer Sanchez," I interrupted, showing him the original vehicle registration. "My son had no legal authorization to give my car to a third party. This constitutes misappropriation and possibly document forgery if he used any paperwork to justify the transfer. The officer carefully studied the BMW's papers, all in my name, with license plate BCN 7854HM. You're right, ma'am. We'll file a report immediately. Do you know where the vehicle is now? I feigned uncertainty, even though I knew perfectly well the GPS tracker would allow me to locate it at any moment. I'm not sure, officer. My son mentioned his father-in-law needed it for work, but he didn't specify where or for how long. It's President. While Officer Sanchez drafted the report, I discreetly called my neighbor, Linda Ruiz, a 73-year-old woman who had witnessed part of the altercation from her balcony the day before. Linda, I said, could you testify about what you saw at my house yesterday? I need to document that my son took my car without my real consent. Linda, outraged by what she had seen, immediately agreed. Emily, what they did to you was a disgrace. Of course I'll testify. I clearly saw how they pressured you and forced you to hand over the keys. That wasn't a voluntary gift. After leaving the police station with official report number 224-4851, I went to the office of Mark Delgado, a lawyer specializing in civil and criminal law whom I had met years ago when I installed security systems in his firm near Millennium Park. Emily, Mark greeted me with genuine concern as he heard my story. What you're describing constitutes several simultaneous crimes: misappropriation, coercion, and possibly document forgery if your son used any papers to justify giving the vehicle to his father-in-law. I showed him the recording Patricia had made, which, ironically, was perfect evidence of the coercion used against me. Mark, this recording clearly shows it wasn't a voluntary gift. Listen to David's shouting, the veiled threats, the psychological pressure. No judge would consider this free consent. The lawyer analyzed the video with professional attention. Emily, this is pure gold from a legal standpoint. Your daughter-in-law documented her own crime. Furthermore, the fact that Anthony took the vehicle knowing he had no legal right to it makes him an accomplice in receiving stolen property. While Mark prepared the legal strategy, I discreetly activated the GPS tracking app on my phone. The red dot on the screen showed my BMW was parked on Western Avenue, number 428, at what appeared to be a mechanic's shop. What are they doing there? I wondered aloud, feeling a mix of curiosity and alarm. That afternoon, pretending to be casual, I went to the location indicated by the GPS. It was indeed a workshop, Western Auto Service, run by a mechanic named Ruben Castro. From a distance, I could see Anthony talking animatedly with the owner, pointing to different parts of my car. I managed to get close enough to overhear fragments of their conversation. Yeah, it's mine now. The old lady couldn't handle it anymore. I need you to swap the plates for some temporary ones. Anthony's words confirmed my worst suspicions. Not only had they taken my vehicle, but they were trying to conceal its identity. I immediately called Officer Sanchez to inform him of this new evidence. Officer, they've located my BMW and are trying to modify its identification at a workshop on Western Avenue. This significantly aggravates the legal situation. The officer asked me not to intervene directly and promised to investigate the establishment. Mrs. Vasquez, if they are altering the vehicle's identification, this becomes a much more serious case. They could face charges for aggravated receiving of stolen property and forgery of official documents. It maybe did. That evening, David called me with a completely different attitude, as if nothing had happened. Mom, how are you? I hope you've had time to think about yesterday's decision. Anthony is very happy with the BMW. He says it's exactly what he needed for his executive chauffeur jobs. David, I responded, keeping my tone controlled. Do you have any idea of the legal implications of what you did yesterday? That car is still legally mine. You had no right to give it to anyone without my genuine consent. My son laughed dismissively. Mom, don't exaggerate. You handed over the keys yourself. We all saw it. Patricia recorded it. There's no legal problem here. You just finally did the right thing. And what if I told you I've filed a formal complaint for misappropriation? I asked directly. There was a long silence on the other end of the line before David answered in a trembling voice. What are you saying, Mom? You can't report your own son for helping you make a responsible decision. David, what you did yesterday wasn't helping me. It was robbing me. And now Anthony is trying to change my car's license plates at some shady workshop. Did you know that too? The panic in my son's voice became obvious. Mom, wait. We can fix this. It doesn't have to go to court. We're family. We can find a solution. Also, the only solution, David, is for you to immediately return my vehicle and publicly apologize for the humiliation you put me through. Otherwise, this will follow its natural legal course. I hung up the phone, feeling a strange mix of sadness and satisfaction. For the first time in 24 hours, I was the one in control of the situation. On Tuesday, April 30th, I met early with Mark Delgado at his office to develop the legal strategy that would get my BMW back and teach a permanent lesson to those who had dared to humiliate me. The meeting turned out to be much more productive than I had imagined. "Emily," Mark began, spreading several documents across his mahogany desk. "After carefully analyzing your case, I can confirm you have solid legal grounds for multiple simultaneous lawsuits. We're not just talking about getting your vehicle back, but about setting precedents that protect your dignity and your assets." The lawyer explained every legal aspect in detail. First, we have aggravated misappropriation against David for seizing your BMW through psychological coercion documented on video. Second, knowing receipt of stolen property against Anthony for accepting and using an asset he knew did not legally belong to him. Third, attempted document forgery for trying to alter the vehicle's identification. Mark continued. Furthermore, the fact that Patricia recorded the whole scene of coercion provides us with irrefutable evidence. In criminal law, coercion is defined as forcing someone to do something through physical or moral violence. The yelling, the age-related insults, and the group pressure clearly constitute psychological violence. There's not self-effect. I showed him the GPS app on my phone, where the red dot indicated my BMW was still at the workshop on Western Avenue. "Mark, I have the vehicle's exact location in real time. Also, yesterday I confirmed that Anthony is trying to change the license plates, which significantly aggravates the charges." My lawyer's face lit up. "You have a GPS tracker installed? Emily, this is perfect. Not only can we prove where the vehicle is, but we can also document all its movements from the moment of the theft. This makes your case practically undeniable." Mark explained the procedure. "We will file an expanded complaint, including the new elements. We will request a court order for the immediate recovery of the vehicle and restraining orders to prevent it from leaving the state. We will also seek compensation for moral damages and financial losses." Annexed. As we discussed the legal aspects, my phone rang. It was Patricia, David's wife, her voice clearly agitated. "Emily, we need to talk urgently. David is very worried about the police report. Can we meet to clear up this misunderstanding?" "Patricia," I replied calmly, "there is no misunderstanding. You stole my car through coercion and are now trying to hide the evidence by modifying its identification. This is already in the hands of the justice system. Cap it." "But Emily," she insisted in a pleading tone, "we're family. Surely we can reach an agreement without involving the courts. Anthony says he can return the car immediately if you drop the charges." "Tell Anthony it's too late for that. The crime has already been committed, the evidence is documented, and the law will take its course. If you really want to minimize the consequences, return the vehicle voluntarily and prepare to face the legal responsibilities for your actions." It's never him. And it's never him. I hung up, feeling a deep satisfaction. For the first time since Sunday, they were experiencing the anxiety and desperation they had caused me. That afternoon, Mark and I went to the courthouse to formally file all the complaints. Judge Elena Vargas, a woman in her 52nd with a reputation for being particularly strict in cases of family abuse, meticulously reviewed our documentation. "Mrs. Vasquez," the judge said after studying the video recorded by Patricia, "this video material constitutes exceptional evidence. We rarely see cases where the perpetrators themselves so clearly document their crimes. I will immediately issue an order for the location and recovery of the vehicle." The efficiency of the judicial system pleasantly surprised me. In less than 2 hours, the court order was ready and had been transmitted to all police units in the state. My BMW would be officially located and recovered in the coming hours. Upon returning home, I found David waiting for me at the door with a desperate expression. "Mom, please, we have to talk. This is getting out of control. Anthony is willing to return the car right now, no conditions." "David," I said, looking him directly in the eyes, "did you really think you could steal my car, humiliate me publicly, try to forge documents, and then just give it back when things got complicated? Is that the kind of person you've become?" My son tried to justify himself. "Mom, it was never our intention to steal anything. We genuinely believed it was for the best. Anthony has a lot of experience with luxury cars, and we thought, "Enough lies, David," I finally exploded, releasing 48 hours of pent-up anger. "Don't steal my intelligence along with my car. You planned this, you coerced me, you recorded my humiliation, and you immediately started hiding evidence by changing the plates. That isn't family concern, it's a premeditated crime." David recoiled, visibly shocked by my reaction. He had never seen me explode like that. "Mom, I'm so sorry. We didn't know you would feel this bad. We can fix this, I promise. The only thing you can do now," I said, regaining my composure, "is face the legal consequences of your decisions. Tomorrow, the police will officially recover my BMW. After that, you will have to explain to a judge why you thought you had the right to steal an elderly person's property through psychological threats. Thank you for this time." That night, as I reviewed all the legal documents prepared by Mark, I felt a calm I hadn't experienced in days. I had finally regained control of the situation, and those who had tried to take advantage of my apparent vulnerability were beginning to understand they had gravely underestimated their victim. The GPS tracker showed my BMW was still at the same workshop, but now I knew that in a few hours it would be back in my hands, where it always should have been. Wednesday, May 1st, dawned with a perfect irony. While the country celebrated Labor Day, I was preparing to recover the fruit of my labor stolen by my own son. What I didn't expect was to discover the extent to which Patricia and Anthony had turned my humiliation into a public spectacle. At 9 in the morning, while I was calmly having breakfast and reviewing the legal procedures Mark had prepared, I received a call from my neighbor, Linda Ruiz. "Emily," she said in an indignant voice, "you have to see what that shameless Patricia has posted on Facebook. She's turned the theft of your car into a celebration." I immediately opened the app on my phone and searched for Patricia's profile. What I found exceeded my worst expectations. She had posted multiple photos of Anthony proudly posing next to my BMW, with comments that made my blood boil. The first photo showed Anthony with the keys in his hand, smiling in front of the car's hood. The caption read, "Finally, Anthony has the car he deserves. After years of driving for important businessmen, he can now enjoy a BMW of his own." Some people don't know how to value what they have until someone smarter takes charge. The second image was even more provocative. Anthony sitting in the driver's seat, adjusting the rearview mirror with the comment, "My father-in-law really knows how to handle a luxury car. Not like certain older people who only use it to go to the supermarket. This BMW finally has a real driver." But the photo that infuriated me the most showed Anthony and Patricia toasting with champagne inside my car. The caption was blatantly offensive, celebrating that this beautiful BMW is no longer being wasted in the hands of someone who didn't know how to appreciate it. Anthony is going to use it for important jobs, not for retiree strolls. Number BMW, number life upgrade, number better in professional hands. I would have protected him. I immediately took screenshots of all the posts and sent them to Mark via WhatsApp. His response was immediate. "Emily, this is invaluable legal evidence. They are publicly documenting the crime of receiving stolen property and also committing serious slander against you. This greatly strengthens our case." The reactions on social media were also revealing. Several family acquaintances had commented on the photos with congratulatory messages for Anthony, clearly unaware of the true story. "Way to go, Anthony," wrote someone named Emily Fernandez. "You deserve that BMW after so much hard work." However, what caught my attention most were the comments from some people who seemed to partially know the situation. A woman named Rose Medina had written, "Patricia, wasn't that David's mom's car? How did Anthony end up with it?" Patricia had responded evasively, "Rose, it was a car that was being wasted. Now it's in better hands. That's what's important." It's a dact. I decided to investigate Anthony's social media profile more deeply. What I discovered provided valuable information about his history as a driver. On his LinkedIn profile, he presented himself as a professional executive chauffeur with 30 years of experience in high-end transport. However, upon carefully reviewing his past posts, I found troubling inconsistencies. In January 2024, Anthony had posted a photo from inside a public bus with the comment, "No car of my own again, but we keep moving forward." In February, he had publicly asked for money. "If anyone can help me with $500 to repair my old Ford, I would be eternally grateful. I need to work, and I don't have money for the mechanic. These posts revealed that Anthony was in a desperate financial situation, which explained his sudden interest in my BMW. I carefully documented all this information as additional evidence of their criminal motives. At 11 inches the morning, Inspector Charles Navarro from the Chicago PD called me with expected news. Mrs. Vasquez, we have located your vehicle at the workshop you indicated. We will proceed with its immediate recovery with the corresponding court order. Can you accompany us to formally identify the car? Of course, I accepted immediately. I arrived at Western Auto Service, accompanied by Inspector Navarro and 2 other officers. The scene we found confirmed all my suspicions. My BMW was raised on a hydraulic lift, while Ruben Castro, the workshop owner, was trying to install fake license plates. "Stop, Chicago police!" shouted the inspector, showing the court order. "This vehicle has been reported stolen. Cease all work on it immediately." Aldem Dalapane. Anthony, who was supervising the installation of the fake plates, turned pale upon seeing the police arrive. "I didn't know there was any legal problem," he stammered, trying to escape through the back door of the workshop. "Freeze!" one of the officers ordered him. "Anthony Jimenez, you are under arrest for receiving a stolen vehicle and forgery of official documents. You have the right to remain silent and to request the presence of a lawyer. Have to beat now." The mechanic, Ruben, was also arrested as an accomplice, as my BMW's original license plates were found in his possession, along with forged documents intended to justify the vehicle's identity change. As the officers handcuffed Anthony, he looked at me with a mixture of pleading and desperation. "Emily, please, tell the police this is a family misunderstanding. David assured me you had voluntarily donated the car." "In his one helping and down." "Anthony," I replied with icy calm, "social media is full of pictures of you celebrating the theft of my car. You can hardly call something a misunderstanding when you publicly celebrated it as a personal triumph." Inspector Navarro handed me the original keys to my BMW. "Mrs. Vasquez, your vehicle is officially recovered. You will need to come to the station tomorrow to complete the return paperwork and update your complaint with the new evidence found." It's no. When I was finally able to sit behind the wheel of my car again, I felt a sense of justice and satisfaction I hadn't felt in days. The engine started perfectly, and all systems were working normally despite the attempted tampering. However, upon inspecting the interior of the vehicle, I discovered they had left trash, stained the leather seats, and slightly scratched the dashboard. These additional damages would be perfect evidence for claiming compensation for the deterioration of the recovered property. That afternoon, Patricia's social media changed drastically. All the photos celebrating the theft had been deleted, but I already had backups of everything. Her new Facebook status simply said, "Sometimes things don't go as planned." It was too late for regrets. Justice had begun its work. Thursday, May 2nd, became the day that legal reality brutally struck those who had underestimated the consequences of their actions. As I drove my recovered BMW to the police station to complete the paperwork, I received a desperate call from David that revealed the extent to which panic had taken over his entire family. "Mom, they arrested Anthony last night!" my son shouted in a broken voice. The lawyers say he could face up to 3 years in prison for aggravated receiving of stolen property and document forgery. Patricia is hysterical. She says they're going to lose their house if Anthony goes to jail. "You have to do something to stop this." "David," I replied, maintaining a serene tone as I parked in front of the station. "I didn't do anything. You all chose to steal my car, humiliate me publicly, forge documents, and celebrate your crimes on social media. Now the justice system is doing exactly what it's supposed to do, protect honest citizens from criminals. But we're family, Mom. You can't let Anthony go to prison over a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding," I repeated with bitter irony, "doesn't include trying to change the license plates of a stolen vehicle in a shady workshop. That's called concealing evidence, and it's a serious crime in any civilized legal code." Next helping. Inside the station, Inspector Navarro greeted me with additional documentation that had emerged during the overnight investigation. "Mrs. Vasquez, we have important updates." Upon reviewing Anthony Jimenez's record, we discovered he has a prior for petty fraud in 2019. Furthermore, the mechanic, Ruben Castro, confessed that Anthony had promised him $5,000 to change the BMW's identity. He said not lettered. This information confirmed that the theft of my car had not been an impulsive decision, but a calculated plan for financial gain. "Inspector," I asked, "does this mean Anthony intended to sell my vehicle?" "Exactly." Castro stated that Anthony had shown him supposed buyers interested in acquiring a BMW without papers for $50,000. His plan was to sell it on the black market and pocket the difference. The magnitude of the betrayal struck me deeply. Not only had they stolen my car for personal use, but they intended to sell it illegally and split the profits. My own son had participated in a criminal conspiracy that would have permanently stripped me of $85,000 of my savings. The inspector continued. "We have also analyzed the WhatsApp messages between David and Anthony from the week before the theft. There is clear evidence of premeditation. Anthony wrote, verbatim, 'The old lady won't notice until it's too late. By the time she reacts, the car will already have a new identity.' Those messages completely demolished any pretense of innocence or good intentions. David had actively participated in planning the theft of my assets, making himself the chief architect of my humiliation. As I signed the official vehicle recovery documents, my phone buzzed with multiple messages from Patricia. "Emily, please, we need to talk urgently. Anthony is in a cell. David can't sleep from the guilt, and I'm 3 months pregnant. We can't let this destroy our family." The mention of the pregnancy was clearly a desperate attempt at emotional manipulation. I replied curtly, "Patricia, you should have considered the family consequences before planning to steal an elderly woman's savings to sell her car on the black market. Your pregnancy neither justifies nor excuses the crimes committed." Arius. At 2 in the afternoon, Mark Delgado summoned me to his office to discuss the recent legal developments. His analysis of the situation was devastating for my attackers. "Emily, with the new evidence of premeditation and intent to sell illegally, we are looking at a case of criminal conspiracy. David, Anthony, and possibly Patricia could face much more severe charges." "What does that mean in practical terms?" I asked. "David could receive between 2 and 4 years in prison for aggravated misappropriation and participation in a criminal organization. Anthony faces up to 5 years for receiving stolen property, document forgery, and attempted fraud. Patricia could be prosecuted as an accomplice if it's proven she knew about the illegal sale plan." Mark spread copies of all the messages intercepted by the police on his desk. "Look at this, Emily," David wrote. "My mother will never suspect a thing. She's always been too trusting with family." And Anthony replied, "Perfect. In a week we'll have $50,000 clean dollars and she won't even know how to get the car back." The calculated coldness of those words produced a mixture of pain and fury I had never experienced. My own son had not only participated in robbing me, but had used my motherly trust as a tool to facilitate the crime. "There's more," Mark continued. "Patricia also sent messages to friends bragging about the plan. She wrote, 'Anthony is going to get a free BMW from David's mom. Old people are so easy to manipulate when they think it's for their own good.' That afternoon, the prosecutor, Roberto Mendoza, summoned me to update my statement with the new evidence. "Mrs. Vasquez," the prosecutor told me, "your case has become a model for combating this type of intra-family crime. We will be seeking the maximum penalties to send a clear message. Family ties do not protect criminals." Aldersprest. Leaving the prosecutor's office, I found David waiting for me at the door, looking haggard. He clearly hadn't slept, and his appearance reflected the weight of the consequences he finally understood. "Mom, I need you to know I never wanted to hurt you this much. Everything just got out of control." "David," I said, looking him straight in the eye, "the messages intercepted by the police show exactly what you wanted to do. You planned to steal my savings, sell my car illegally, and split $50,000 while I was left stripped of my property and humiliated. There was nothing accidental about your actions." My son tried to justify himself one more time. "Mom, those messages sound worse than what we were really planning to do." "Enough lies," I exploded, interrupting him. "The police have complete evidence of your criminal conspiracy. The formal judicial process will begin tomorrow, and you will have to explain to a judge why you thought you had the right to defraud a defenseless old woman." That night, while reviewing all the legal documents in the tranquility of my home, I realized I had recovered much more than my car. I had recovered my dignity, proven that experience and intelligence overcome arrogant youth, and established that family betrayals have real and irreversible consequences. The justice system had worked perfectly, protecting my rights and punishing those who tried to take advantage of my apparent vulnerability. Friday, May 3rd, marked the beginning of the total collapse for those who had conspired against me. As I meticulously inspected the damage they had caused to my BMW during the days of illegal possession, I discovered additional evidence that would turn their legal situation from serious to catastrophic. The leather driver's seat had a cigarette burn the size of a quarter. The ashtray, which had never been used, was full of smelly cigarette butts. In the glove compartment, I found gas station receipts showing they had driven more than 1,200 miles in just 4 days, including trips to Milwaukee and St. Louis, which Anthony never mentioned. But the most revealing find was in the vehicle's GPS navigation system. Reviewing the destination history, I discovered they had visited 3 different used car dealerships, definitively confirming their intention to sell my BMW on the black market. I immediately photographed every piece of damage and documented all the additional evidence before calling Mark. I have physical proof they used my car for illegal sale prospects, I informed him. The GPS shows visits to dealerships in Milwaukee and St. Louis, plus intentional damage to the interior. He said dated action in the front. It spanned. Emily, this is perfect, my lawyer replied with satisfaction. Now we can add charges for malicious damage and large-scale attempted fraud. Their sentences are going to increase significantly. At 10 inches the morning, the court's expert appraiser, Andrew Soria, arrived at my home to officially assess the vehicle's deterioration. His technical report was devastating for the accused. Mrs. Vasquez, the damages exceed $4,500. The burn on the seat requires a complete replacement of the upholstery, and the tobacco smell has permeated the ventilation systems. While the appraiser completed his evaluation, I received an unexpected visit that would dramatically change the course of the entire investigation. It was a woman in her 40s named Mercedes Vidal, who introduced herself as an employee of Midwest Auto Sales in Milwaukee. Mrs. Vasquez, she said, showing her professional ID. I came from Milwaukee because we believe your BMW was involved in an attempted fraud at our establishment. Could you confirm if a man named Anthony Jimenez visited our premises last Tuesday? I showed her photos of Anthony I had obtained from social media. Yes, that's definitely him, Mercedes confirmed. He presented himself as the owner of the BMW, claiming he needed to sell it urgently due to family financial problems. He was offering the vehicle for $55,000, significantly below market value. What documentation did he present? I asked, intrigued. That's the problem. The ownership papers he showed were clearly forged. Our document expert, Julian Morales, immediately spotted the irregularities. That's why we decided not to proceed with the transaction and reported the case to the authorities. Mercedes handed me copies of all the forged documents Anthony had tried to use. Mrs. Vasquez, these documents show your name as the voluntary seller, with a signature that obviously doesn't match your official documents. Anthony had prepared a very elaborate scam. This revelation confirmed that the conspiracy was much more sophisticated than we had initially imagined. Not only had they stolen my car, but they had forged sales documents with my identity to legitimize the fraudulent transaction. I immediately contacted Inspector Navarro to inform him of these developments. Inspector, I have evidence that Anthony tried to sell my BMW in Milwaukee using forged documents with my name. This constitutes identity theft, on top of all the other charges. Excellent work, Mrs. Vasquez. We will send a team to Milwaukee to collect all the additional evidence. This turns the case into large-scale fraud, with the aggravating factor of identity theft. At 2 inches the afternoon, Patricia appeared at my door looking desperate, clearly not having slept for days. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and her clothes showed signs of personal neglect. Emily, please, I need to beg you to have mercy on us. Anthony is in jail. David can't work because his company found out about the arrest, and I'm pregnant with no income. In of warts. Patricia, I replied, observing her pitiful state. Where was this concern for the consequences when you recorded my humiliation to mock me on social media? Where was your conscience when you celebrated the theft of my savings with champagne inside my car? But Emily, we never thought it would go this far. We thought eventually you would understand it was for the best. Anthony really needed a vehicle for work. Work? I asked incredulously. You call trying to sell my BMW for $55,000 in Milwaukee with forged documents work? Was that the kind of work Anthony needed to do with my car? Patricia's face turned completely pale. How do you know about that? Because I'm smarter than you all thought, Patricia. Because I took precautions you never imagined. And because the justice system thoroughly investigates these types of crimes to protect honest citizens. Patricia began to sob uncontrollably. Emily, if Anthony goes to prison, we'll lose everything. Our house is mortgaged. I have a baby on the way. And David already lost his job. We don't know what we're going to do. You should have considered those consequences before conspiring to steal an elderly woman's life savings, I replied without showing compassion. Every decision has consequences, Patricia. You chose the path of crime. Now you must face the path of justice. They were fined from 2 helpsetted, and the cause of then in remenedant, and why in remenedy. That evening, Mark summoned me to review the updated legal strategy with all the new evidence gathered. Emily, your case has become a perfect textbook example of intra-family criminal conspiracy. We have misappropriation, coercion, receiving stolen property, document forgery, identity theft, attempted fraud, and malicious damage. It's practically impossible for them to escape significant prison sentences. What specific sentences are they facing? I asked. David could get between 3 and 5 years for leading the conspiracy. Anthony faces up to 7 years due to the multiple aggravating factors. And Patricia could receive 2 years as an accomplice, although the pregnancy might suspend the execution of her sentence. That night, as I ate dinner peacefully in my fully restored BMW, I reflected on how intelligence, patience, and faith in the judicial system had triumphed over arrogance, greed, and family betrayal. Those who had tried to take advantage of my apparent vulnerability were discovering that underestimating an experienced old woman can be the most costly mistake of their lives. On Monday, May 6th, I made a decision that had been maturing in my mind during the darkest days of this betrayal. It was time to definitively cut all the financial and legal ties that bound me to David, thereby protecting my assets from future attacks by those who had shown they considered me nothing more than a resource to be exploited. At 8 inches the morning, I went to the Bank of America branch, where I had kept my accounts for 35 years. The manager, Monica Rivas, greeted me with the professionalism that had characterized our banking relationship for decades. Mrs. Vasquez, she greeted me after reviewing my file. I see you're requesting to cancel several operations linked to your son, David. May I ask the reason for these significant changes? I briefly explained the legal situation we were facing. Monica frowned as she listened to the details. I completely understand your decision, Mrs. Vasquez. Unfortunately, intra-family financial crimes are on the rise. We will proceed immediately with all the requested cancellations. And Flace. The first measure was to revoke the power of attorney I had granted David 12 years ago when I trusted he could help me with administrative tasks in case of a medical emergency. This power of attorney allowed him to access all your checking and savings accounts, Monica explained as she processed the cancellation. From now on, only you will have authority over your funds. I was completely unaware that for years I had been automatically depositing $250 a month into a supplementary savings account that he used at his discretion for family expenses. Mrs. Vasquez, the manager informed me, in the last 5 years, your son has withdrawn approximately $15,000 from this account without consulting you. This revelation struck me deeply. While I was pinching every penny to buy my BMW, David had been quietly siphoning my savings to finance the lifestyle he maintained with Patricia. The betrayal was much deeper and more prolonged than I had imagined. Monica, I want to immediately transfer all those funds to a new account that David has no knowledge of, I instructed, resolute. The second administrative measure was to contact my insurance provider to cancel the private health policy I had been paying for David and Patricia for the last 8 years. The annual cost of $3,400 had been a significant sacrifice from my pension, justified by my desire to ensure quality medical care for my family. Laura Perez, the insurance agent, processed the cancellation efficiently. Mrs. Vasquez, the family policy you maintained covered specialist consultations, private hospitalizations, and high-end dental treatments. Your beneficiaries will lose this coverage starting next month. The third action was to radically change my will. The notary, Mr. Torres, who had drafted my original will 15 years ago, met me at his office to discuss the requested changes. Emily, the notary said as he reviewed the modifications, you are completely altering the distribution of your estate. David, who was the main beneficiary of 60% of your assets, will now be left with just the 5% that state law requires. Exactly, Mr. Torres. My son has shown that he considers my assets as something he has an immediate right to, regardless of my well-being or dignity. I will not allow him to continue seeing my inheritance as a prize he can claim in advance through criminal acts. It is one of mine. The new will redistributed my assets so that 40% would be donated to a foundation for programs assisting elderly victims of family scams. Another 30% would go to my niece, Elena Vasquez, the daughter of my deceased brother, who had always treated me with genuine respect. The remaining 25% would be set aside for my own medical care in the years to come. Emily, the notary observed, this distribution sends a very clear message about the consequences of betraying family trust. Are you absolutely sure about this decision? Absolutely. David will have to learn to build his own life without depending on the assets he so despises when in my hands, but so covets for his criminal plans. That afternoon, David showed up at my house looking haggard and desperate. He had obviously discovered some of the financial measures I had implemented. Mom, the bank called me saying my support account has been closed. Patricia got a letter from the insurance company canceling our health coverage. What's going on? What's going on, David, is that I am protecting my assets from criminals who have shown they see my resources as a piggy bank for their conspiracies, I replied with absolute coldness. Mom, we're family. You can't punish us financially for a misunderstanding that's already being resolved legally. Aligned. A misunderstanding, I repeated with disdain, does not include conspiring for weeks to steal my car, forging documents with my name, and trying to sell my property for $55,000 in another state. That's called a criminal organization, and it has permanent consequences. David tried to appeal to my maternal feelings. Mom, Patricia is pregnant. I lost my job because of this legal situation, and now you're cutting off all financial support. How are we going to survive? The same way millions of families survive, by working honestly, paying your own expenses, and building your future without robbing your elderly parents, I replied implacably. But Mom, you were always generous with us. Why change now over something that can be resolved with time and understanding? I changed, David, because I discovered that for 5 years you were quietly siphoning $15,000 from my savings accounts. I changed because you conspired to strip me of an additional $85,000. And I changed because you celebrated my humiliation as if it were a personal triumph. My son's face fell as he realized I had uncovered all his financial manipulations. Mom, that money, I thought it was help you were giving me voluntarily. Voluntarily? Like you voluntarily stole my BMW? David, your concept of voluntary seems to mean I take what I want without asking. That phase of your life is now definitively over. Thanks, Des. That night, as I organized all the legal and financial documents that would guarantee my total economic independence, I felt a sense of liberation I hadn't felt in years. For the first time since David became an adult, my resources were completely protected from manipulation and family conspiracies. The emotional price was high, but the recovered dignity and financial security fully justified every decision made. On Wednesday, May 8th, the day began with news that would definitively transform the legal landscape of this whole conspiracy. The prosecutor, Roberto Mendoza, informed me that they had decided to also prosecute Patricia as the intellectual co-author of the crime after discovering evidence proving her active participation in planning the theft. Mrs. Vasquez, the prosecutor explained during our morning meeting, we have thoroughly analyzed Patricia's WhatsApp messages with her friends in the 2 weeks leading up to the theft. The conversations reveal that she was the one who initially suggested the idea of taking your BMW, manipulating both David and Anthony to execute the plan. He showed me transcripts of conversations that sent a chill down my spine. Patricia had written to her friend, Christina Morales, David is too soft with his mother. That old woman has a car worth more than our apartment, but barely uses it to go to the grocery store. Anthony needs a decent vehicle, and we need the money we could get from selling it discreetly. In another message, Patricia had specifically detailed the psychological strategy. We're going to use her age as an excuse. We'll tell her it's dangerous for her to drive something so powerful that Anthony has more experience. Old people are very sensitive to those arguments when you press them correctly. Mr. Mendoza, I asked, feeling a mix of astonishment and disgust, are you saying that Patricia orchestrated the entire criminal operation? Exactly. She identified the opportunity, manipulated her husband to pressure his mother, convinced Anthony to participate by promising him financial benefits, and coordinated the entire logistics. David and Anthony were instruments of a much more calculating mind. This revelation completely altered my perception of the betrayal. For years, I had considered Patricia simply an ambitious daughter-in-law, never imagining she possessed the coldness necessary to meticulously design the theft of her elderly mother-in-law's assets. The prosecutor continued, "We have additional evidence that Patricia researched the market value of your BMW beforehand, contacted potential buyers on the black market, and established the sale prices before executing the theft. Her pregnancy was not coincidental. She planned it strategically to generate sympathy if the operation was discovered." "Do you mean even the pregnancy was calculated as part of the conspiracy?" "Medical records confirm she stopped using contraceptives exactly 2 months before the theft, coinciding with her first messages about taking your car. Patricia turned her future motherhood into a preemptive legal shield. Actually left At 11 inches the morning, I received a hysterical call from David, informing me that the police had also arrested Patricia. "Mom, they came into our house with a warrant and took Patricia away in handcuffs. The neighbors saw everything. It was humiliating. She's pregnant! They can't treat her like a common criminal." "David," I replied with icy calm, "Patricia is not a common criminal. She is the mastermind of a criminal organization that conspired for months to steal my life savings. Her pregnancy does not exempt her from answering for her crimes." "But Mom, she just wanted what was best for our family. Everything she did was for our future and the baby on the way." "What was best for your family was turning your mother into a victim of fraud. Your future depended on stripping me of $85,000 that I saved by working for 45 years? David, listen to what you're saying and reflect on the kind of people you have become." 8-1. That afternoon, Mark called me urgently to discuss the implications of these new developments. "Emily, the case has gone public. 3 newspapers have requested interviews about what they're calling the case of the BMW stolen by the criminal daughter-in-law. Your story is becoming a symbol in the fight against intra-family abuse towards the elderly." "Public in what sense?" I asked with some concern. "The Senior Citizens Defense Association wants to use your case to promote legal reforms that better protect the elderly from family scams. The Attorney General is considering making it a pilot case to toughen penalties for crimes against vulnerable people." At 4 inches the afternoon, Anthony was temporarily released on a $20,000 bond that his sister managed to secure by mortgaging her home. His first act was to show up at my house to plead for mercy, completely broken by the weeks in pre-trial detention. "Emily," he said in a trembling voice, clearly traumatized by the jail experience, "I need you to know I never wanted to hurt you. Patricia convinced me that you had voluntarily agreed to give me the car. She assured me everything was legal and consensual. I have did it not oblay. Anthony, did you really expect me to believe you didn't know I was being coerced? That you didn't notice my resistance and distress while they were yelling at and humiliating me to hand over the keys? I swear on my mother's memory, Patricia told me you were just being stubborn, but that deep down you understood it was the right thing to do. She promised me you would be grateful for the decision later." In Miley. "And the forged documents to sell my BMW in Milwaukee? Did Patricia also convince you that was legal and ethical?" Anthony hung his head in shame. That was her idea. She told me we needed to protect the car from any potential legal claims from you, that the new papers were just an administrative formality. I don't understand laws, Emily. I trusted she knew what she was doing. It's a daring duet." The conversation confirmed that Patricia had expertly manipulated both David and Anthony, using their emotional and financial weaknesses to build a criminal network with herself as the sole real beneficiary. That night, as I reflected on the diabolical complexity of the entire conspiracy, I understood that I had faced something much more sophisticated than a simple family scam. Patricia had orchestrated a multi-level criminal operation using psychological manipulation, emotional blackmail, and strategic planning to try to systematically strip me of my assets. However, her fundamental mistake was underestimating the intelligence and determination of her chosen victim. My experience in security systems, my preventive legal preparation, and my refusal to be intimidated had completely dismantled her elaborate conspiracy. Justice was working exactly as it should, protecting honest citizens and punishing those who try to exploit the most vulnerable. Monday, May 13th, became the day the final consequences of the criminal conspiracy caught up with each of its participants, proving that the justice system does not tolerate crimes against the elderly, regardless of family ties. The first news arrived at 8 inches the morning through a call from Mark. "Emily, I have important news on 3 different fronts. The construction company where David worked as a project supervisor has decided to fire him permanently. Their HR director, Philip Navarro, considered a criminal record for conspiracy to be incompatible with a position of responsibility." "What does this mean for David financially?" I asked. "It means he loses a salary of $3,200 a month, plus benefits that included a company car, expanded health insurance, and a pension plan. Also, being fired for just cause related to a crime, he is not entitled to severance pay or immediate unemployment benefits." The second consequence directly involved the real estate that David and Patricia had acquired, relying on my continued financial support. The manager of their bank, Thomas Guerrero, contacted me about my son's mortgage situation. "Mrs. Vasquez," the banker explained, "your son David has a $240,000 mortgage on his home, with monthly payments of $1,400. As a secondary guarantor of the loan, we wanted to inform you that they have begun default proceedings." "Mr. Guerrero," I replied firmly, "I formally renounce my status as guarantor. I will present notarized documentation showing that David used privileged information about my assets to obtain that mortgage, information we now know he used to plan crimes against my property." The legal process to renounce the guarantee turned out to be simpler than expected, given that the courts had already established David's pattern of criminal behavior towards my financial resources. In less than a week, the bank would begin foreclosure proceedings against the property, with no possibility of claims against my assets. The third consequence directly affected Anthony, who faced a total economic collapse. His sister, Rose Jimenez, called me crying to explain the desperate situation her entire extended family was in. "Emily," Rose pleaded, "Anthony has lost all his chauffeur jobs because his criminal record shows up on the security checks that companies require. No executive transport company hires drivers with a criminal history. My brother is completely ruined." "Mrs. Jimenez," I replied politely but without compassion, "your brother didn't lose his jobs due to bad luck. He lost them because he chose to participate in a criminal conspiracy to steal an elderly woman's car and sell it illegally. Transport companies have the right to protect themselves from employees who demonstrate criminal behavior." "But Emily, Anthony has 3 young children and a sick wife. The mortgage on my house is at risk because I used it as collateral for his bail. If he can't work, we will lose everything." "In my round it, your brother should have considered those family responsibilities before conspiring to defraud a retiree. Decisions have consequences, Mrs. Jimenez, and society should not subsidize the poor choices of those who choose to commit crimes." But the most dramatic consequence came on Thursday, May 16th, when Patricia was hospitalized for an emergency hypertensive crisis related to the stress of the legal process. Her doctor, Dr. Isaac Ramirez, contacted me as the closest available family member. "Mrs. Vasquez," the doctor informed me, "Mrs. Patricia is experiencing serious complications in her pregnancy due to extreme stress. Her blood pressure is dangerously high, and there is a risk of premature birth. She needs absolute rest and emotional tranquility." "Dr. Ramirez," I replied, "I regret to hear about the medical complications.